to this new event led by Digital SME. Today we are discussing non-fungible tokens and the possible applications that we are seeing in the market and how the market is evolving in this direction. My name is Margherita Leder. I'm the co-chair of the Digital SME Blockchain and DLT Technologies Task Force. Together with me today, we have my fellow co-chair and director of Industrial Petko, Karamojev. Thank you, Petko, for being here. And from IPwe, Cheryl Coles, who will be discussing with us today some of the most cutting-edge application we are seeing in the NFT market. Just a couple of general information on what Digital SME has been doing on the topic of blockchain DLT technologies. We have been focused for a while now in giving SMEs a bigger understanding on how these cutting-edge technologies may support their business in evolving in a different way, and at the same time offering opportunities for conversation with regulators, raising awareness, providing education, and creating a space for synergies. All these elements combined represent the effort we're trying to do to give blockchain and DLT technologies the space they need to become as relevant as they have to be, given the evolution they're providing in several aspects and in several markets. And this event today is part of this process, of this awareness and education path, as well as an opportunity to synergize and work together on new solutions. This is the brief agenda we're going to have today. So after my brief, let's say, rules definition and quick introduction, we're going to move forward with the Petko presentation, and afterward we will have a shared presentation. Of course, this is a conversation, so we hope you have so many questions or comments about what is going to be discussed today. So feel free to post them in the chat. I will be moderating the Q&A session at the end of the two presentations. Don't wait until the end. Feel free to drop comments during the presentation or anytime you feel you agree or disagree with something it said, or something sparkled your interest and you'd like to know more about that. Please note that the presentations you're going to see, the decks, won't be shared at the end, so you will not receive them via email. So make sure you're paying the appropriate attention to this incredible presentations we're seeing today. And for any question, of course, feel free also to reach out to our organizers for any technical inconvenience you may have during the meeting. And with that said, Petko, I would like to leave the floor to you for a kickoff on how the NFT market is evolving, given the fact that if you check your Google Trends today, you're going to see that NFT is one of the most searched words in the technological space, and the peak has reached higher and higher in the last 4 months. It's a global trend, with some specific countries leading, for example, our friend in China or our friend in the US, but Europe has been leading as well in the number of researches and possible application and use cases. So Petko, I'll leave the word to you so you can give us some ideas on how it's evolving. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Just let me share my screen. Please confirm that you can see it.
Yes, all good.
Oh, good. Let me just something else. So, good morning to all of you, and thanks for the invitation. Thanks for the intro, Margherita. What on earth are those like non-fungible tokens, aka NFTs? I'll try to cover in the next few minutes a very interesting, probably at least for me, a kind of a thoughts around NFTs for tokenization of patents and intellectual property. I'm the director of Industria, and the following presentation was I kind of used this option to call a friend. So it's with the support of CMS, one of the biggest law firms in London. Let me provide you with a kind of a brief information of who I am. I'm a CEO and a co-founder of a tech firm called Industria. I'm also a mentor at one of the biggest distributed ledger and blockchain platforms, Archery. I used to be an advisor for 2 years at the All-Party Parliamentary Group in London, and currently I'm a member of the European Blockchain Partnership Technical Group. Obviously, as many of the participants in the discussion, I wear a different hat. I'm also an industry associate of the University College of London Centre for Blockchain Technologies, and an ISO and a Sense-Elect expert for AI and blockchain standardization. Prior to the pandemic, I was kind of a citizen of Europe, or a global citizen, living at the same time in three kind of a very interesting places in Europe. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, I was grounded. Hopefully, soon I'll be kind of a traveling again. So, very kind of an interesting topic are the NFTs. What are these? What's the use case? Obviously, in a nutshell, they are like a tokenized digital representation of a broad range of assets, which are unique and not divisible. So, in a nutshell, a non-fungible token is a receipt. A bit of technical stuff. So it's most of the tokens are presented on the Ethereum blockchain. Probably you've heard about it, Bitcoin, Ethereum. They follow the one specific standard, which is called ERC 721. In the permission world, there are also kind of similar standards. For example, the Corda token SDK, there's a non-fungible standard. The interesting thing about the NFTs is that they can represent a digital asset, such as, for example, an image. They can also track a kind of a real world assets like a house or a deeds of a house, a car, a song, for example. And as you can uniquely define assets, this means that you can also prove ownership over the said assets, and moreover prove their authenticity. This is the kind of the killer feature of the NFT apps. As a digital representation, I can provide you with a couple of very interesting, probably you've heard about these wide range of examples. For example, in the art world, you might have heard about Sophia the robot. Some of its, probably it's the right expression, some of its art was sold for $700,000. There was a Beeple art, very famous artist, sold for 69 million. In the music industry, I do remember I'm a keen fan of Kings of Leon. They've sold as an NFT their new album for, they reached something like 2 million. Lindsay Lohan also had a similar example in 2 weeks after. As memes, I mean, yeah, but arguably it could count as art. You can see the Charlie Bit Me kind of a meme being sold. An interesting example is also the NBA top shots from the authors of the CryptoKitties that you might have heard of. An interesting kind of a feature of the NFTs is this fungibility. So if you're relatively new to the Bitcoin and the world of finance, and by the way, fungibility is a fundamental concept in the finance world, you will understand that this is the key difference in between the fungibility of a currency, digital or non-digital, and the NFTs that are, of course, this is where the name comes, non-fungible. So what does it mean if an asset that sits on a blockchain network is fungible? It doesn't really mean how many times you split a specific unit of anything like a currency, as long as that split totals the same amount. Overall, that's fine. So it doesn't matter if you split $1 in $100 or two banknotes of $50. So as you can see in the picture, a dollar is exchangeable for an equal amount which totals $1. An Ether, which is a very famous cryptocurrency, second by market cap, is exchangeable for an equal amount of their cents, which are called Ways, which total 1 Ether. A Way is a denomination of the Ether. A very similar denomination is in the Bitcoin world. This is the Satoshi. Probably you've heard about the famous kind of inventor of the technology, and the denomination is called Satoshi. The contrast with the non-fungible assets is that if you split up a non-fungible item, it will lose its value. So it's not the same asset. You cannot split it. That's the first kind of characteristics. A second, if you rip up a picture, if you only owned 1/8 of this picture, then the essence of it just wouldn't be the same. So you can't do it. And one type of CryptoKitty, this is one of the first examples that we saw a couple of years ago, doesn't equal kind of another type of a CryptoKitty, so they're absolutely not the same. And the front row kind of seats in a theater or a cinema don't equal the back row seats, so they're completely different. One type of for example, a house doesn't equal another kind of a type of a house. Now, many of the researchers, and this was something really interesting, I observed this NFT noise that had happened for the last couple of months, but many of the researchers and the experts, they kind of completely forget that there are different types of NFT. So it's not just one type. And I'm kind of very excited with the first, it's kind of less excited with the third, but let me walk you through the list of the different types. So obviously there's a common misconception that there's only one type. There are three types. So the first is the original copy, the whole artwork or whatever work is uploaded directly on the blockchain. This is massive, but it has its issues. I'll cover this in a moment. So the whole kind of a thing, the whole digital thing is just uploaded somewhere. The second type of NFT assets kind of allows ownership rights to the work are either part of the NFT itself, or they are kind of encoded in the smart contract, which governs the non-fungible token. And the third type, this is the most common type of NFT, probably in its entirety, it's like 99% of the NFTs. Right now, they're like a pointer metadata. Sorry about the technical wording. I'll come to this in a second and explain a bit more what is it. So a pointer metadata where the NFT signifies ownership of a metadata file which sits out of the particular blockchain. So in a kind of a more details of the two different types that option one and option two, why they're like less popular, what is the problem, and why nobody talks about them, and why I kind of believe that in the years to come we'll see kind of a much more of them. So option number one, if the work is uploaded directly on the blockchain, this will cost quite a lot to upload data on the blockchain, the Ethereum, for example, blockchain. The bigger the data, the more you will have to pay. Gas fees are a massive issue for the Ethereum blockchain right now. So the more data you upload, the more and more expensive this upload and usage of the data will be at the later stage. It all works off how many people want to use that blockchain. The more traffic there is on the blockchain, the more expensive it all gets. So the more people would like to upload that data, not just the price of uploading data, but the number of people uploading data will make all of this experience extremely expensive. And currently, for most of the creators, it's like artists in the most typical case, it doesn't make an economical sense to upload it. With option number two, the ownership right part of the NFT. Now, this is another kind of issue. So smart contracts could be used to determine and transfer the relevant ownership rights. Could. A brief background: smart contracts work off the premise if X, then Y. They're like not particularly smart, or contracts, they're pieces of automation, pieces of code. So if you do something, then the result is predetermined. That's a smart contract. The issue with them is that we still don't know whether these can be considered legally valid. So this is the intersection of law and regulation and information technology. So with this lack of kind of a knowledge, are they legally or not? We don't know. It's like what will happen if things go wrong. So this is the issue. As far as we are at this stage aware, no specific jurisdiction has legislated for smart contract as yet. And it is still one of the many aspects of the blockchain tech that it's heavily considered and being questioned in the moment. So this is why the option two is not that seen. And additionally, just because someone has created a smart contract to turn a piece of work into an NFT, it doesn't automatically mean that the original creator created this smart contract and or minted or created this non-fungible token. Now, what do NFT owners actually own? It's something really interesting. And in this particular case, I mean the so-called permissionless or public blockchain systems. So they own a pointer metadata. This is option number 3 from the above mentioned. So they own a pointer metadata. And under the UK and the European copyright law, the default position is that the author of the artwork is, or the patent at a later stage, we'll cover this as well, is generally the owner of the copyright over the piece of work they've created. However, please consider these 3 main issues. So the person who sells the NFT might not be the copyright owner of the piece of work that has been minted into an NFT. Purchasing an NFT gives the purchaser of ownership interest in the metadata, in this receipt, which points to the copyright protected content, not the copyright protected content itself. And third, the NFT kind of provides the link to content stored elsewhere. Query whether the link takes to the purchaser, to whether it's supposed to take them. So we very much depend on this metadata, on this link. I've tried to kind of sum up a little bit. This might be a little bit complex for some of the audience, some of the participants. There's a little bit techy. There's a little bit kind of a legal stuff. It is what the EU law says about NFTs. This was in cooperation with CMS. I'll try to be as simple as possible. If a token has characteristics similar to the traditional securities like shares, debentures, or units of collective investment scheme, it will be considered as a security token. Now, a token which functions as electronic money, this is out of scope of our discussion, but I just want to let you know, different authorities, like for example, the FCA could and will be considered as an e-money token. So businesses conducting activities connected to these regulated tokens, such as issue, sale, or marketing, will be regulated by different authorities. In the UK, this is the FCA, in the same way that traditional financial services will be regulated. Now, if the token does not confer any rights of ownership, then the ability to hold, buy, or sell, this would be considered as an exchange token and will be not regulated. If the token confirms right to obtain goods or services, like for example, many stocks give the right of dividend, including the rights to other tokens, it will be considered as utility token and will not be regulated as well. If a token combines the characteristics of an exchange token and a utility token, it might also not be unregulated. In this case, Bitcoin and Ethereum are considered to be an exchange token, and this is for their this is why they're unregulated. Now, where does NFTs fit in? The NFTs in the use cases discussed above, collectibles and non-collectibles, will fall into the exchange and the utility token categories. It's therefore should not be regulated. But in theory, an NFT could have characteristics very similar to those of the traditional security. So in some of the cases, they might require a security. And it's a very kind of unlikely that NFTs could have the characteristics of e-money, as fungibility is an essential part of the money. So being not fungible means that they should not be regulated in many in use cases. Now, let's go back to what EU says about the NFTs. The answer is not much. So given the nature of the NFTs, it's very difficult to marry them with the existing legal positions in the European law. For example, in that case, so offer of sale of NFTs, they're not covered by the right of distribution, but taken from the perspective of the copyright law, and there is no exhaustion by way of virtual sale. Digital exhaustion arguments already exist under the case of Tom Cabinet. Probably you might have heard of. This was a relatively new topic for me. This is a specific site in this was a specific case for a website in the Netherlands trying to sell ebooks. So there was plenty of discussions. about the nature of the copyright law in the electronic books. We will not have the time to cover this, but in this use case, so if we connect the NFTs with the Tom Cabinet use case, so digital exhaustion argument already exists under the Tom Cabinet case to make it, even if the NFTs wasn't just a pointer metadata. A supply of ebooks qualifies as this is an act of communication to the public, so it's a different interpretation of the law under a InfoSec directive instead of the so-called distribution to the public, as in the case with the physical books. In the EU, there's a right of distribution, subject to exhaustion, only applies to the tangible objects like books or records. Right of communication to the public as part of Article 3 of the InfoSec directive are not subject to exclusion, applies to online dissemination of protected content. A kind of a complex topic. There are other kind of regimes that were mentioned, as with the right of, for example, distribution. The regimes apply only to the transfer of ownership of artwork, which are physical objects, and therefore not applicable to the resale of the NFTs. So, in a nutshell, there's a lot that is going to happen in the EU law regarding the NFTs. This assumes that in a nutshell, this assumes that the owner of both the NFT and the physical artwork have the legal probably rights to resell the work. Otherwise, all the regimes don't apply. A kind of a very interesting. I'll be very quick with the remaining time. A very interesting topic is the unauthorized sale of the NFTs, and this is something that you should probably know. So theoretically, nothing is stopping someone from minting several NFTs of the same piece of work. So the NFT is not the piece of work itself, as we agreed. This is the option 3. It's the metadata that ties it to the original work, which is out of the blockchain. So where people purchase is unique, they only receive a kind of a unique receipt written on the blockchain. When you upload data on the blockchain, you can set the metadata which attaches to it, and you can claim to be the original creator of the piece of work, even if you are not. And this is quite common note as copy fraud. The minting and the sale of the NFTs might give rise to claims of misattribution and violation of moral rights in the actual copyright owner against the seller. A copy fraud, yeah, a very kind of a relatively new concept, and we've seen it in many of the image libraries that claim to be selling a kind of a piece of art or a copyright that they own. So it's a false copyright claim by an individual or an organization with respect to content in the public domain. A couple of probably closing words. What are the current NFT trends that we need to be very kind of vigilant and very open? The first is obviously the test case and the way to represent patents as NFTs. I'm really eager to hear Cheryl and IPwe. This is by far the most prominent kind of example of patents and being used as NFTs. Obviously, there are other use cases like media and enterprise intellectual property networks, art and blockchain as medium, digital museums. Also, they suffered a lot during the pandemic, metaverse. An integration with the IPFS, interplanetary file system, and multi-chain support will happen, and integration with decentralized finance, which is another extremely interesting and topic to follow with the blockchain that will allow a kind of a even faster exchange of NFTs. Yeah, and I would like again to thank the organizers of the event and CMS in London for helping me with this presentation. I'll be very much happy to answer your questions in the chat or later on during the the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Petko. Thank you for your introduction. And I'm seeing still 46 participants. That's great. And I'm seeing them increasing and not dropping our call. That's a success. And I like to give space and floor to Cheryl Coles. Cheryl is patent attorney by background with over 2 decades of experience, and she's an inventor herself, serving several SMEs as well as enterprise companies across the globe. And Cheryl, we're really happy you decided to join us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Margarita, and thank you so much, Petko. It was fascinating to learn about the environment in the EU that supports NFTs. Perhaps a bridge between our presentations. I noted in a January 14th publication by the EC that the statement that the EC recognizes the importance of legal certainty and a clear regulatory regime in areas pertaining to blockchain-based applications. It's currently focusing on developing a pro-innovation legal framework in the areas of digital assets, including tokenizations and smart contracts, and protecting consumers and providing legal certainty for businesses. So what's fascinating to me, and also hearing about the progress and the development that you described, is this is emerging almost more quickly than the legal regime is able to support it. So let me leave that, though. There's a lot of work, and you'll be a part of it, Petko, a lot of interesting things going on there. Let me leave the legal regime, and let me try and move to a more real-world application. Thank you for recognizing that we are leading in the patent space. Just 2 minutes on the derivation of this presentation. I just want to acknowledge Dr. Jonas Bloch, who is a German IP litigator, a PhD, and also is responsible for the AI and substance of our NFT product development. As Margarita mentioned, a little bit about my background. I'm the Chief Intellectual Property Officer at IPwe, which means I'm responsible for our intellectual property assets, but I'm also a consulting CIPO for our clients, and I'm focused mostly on the SME market, having that market near and dear to my heart. As Margarita mentioned, I also am fortunate to be an inventor myself, former entrepreneur, and so I have a very personal understanding of what that means and what patents mean for SMEs in particular. Petko did a great job of visual representation, no pun intended, of what a non-fungible token is. Just to level set this discussion, it's issued on the blockchain for a variety of different items, including items that are derived from the blockchain itself, and then items or data that are off-chain, and patents fall into the category of items that are off-chain. Patents also are real-world assets, and we are distinguished from the focus of the market today in things like art and music, because we are, in addition to being a real-world item, we also represent a legal right. So a patent is a legal instrument to an invention which has been approved by a patent office. Why do NFTs matter to intellectual property? As Petko noted, the Beeple representation on the right and a number of use cases. The focus in the art world is on proof of ownership and authenticity. I would also say, from my perspective, and one reason why I am so excited about NFTs and their real-world use is the notion, for example, for artwork. Historically, when artwork was sold, the artist relinquished their rights to the future transactions. And what the subtokens of NFTs are allowing us to do today is to give the creator or inventor, in the case of patents, a continuing royalty where the value of the item that is represented by the NFT increases. That to me is tremendously exciting because it recognizes and honors the individual on an ongoing basis during the increase in the valuation of their work. I would also just like to point out something that happened in the US that is a highlight. I'm also fortunate to work with heads of IP at US universities because there is a tremendous interest that we have received. We have a lot of inbound requests from universities, from portions of governments about NFTs, and in their use in assisting university tech transfer, which of course is also applicable in Europe. UC Berkeley created what is in effect a digital artwork, something they called the fourth pillar, which is documentation of the first step in protecting IP for immunotherapy. And it was a groundbreaking way to attack cancer. And so what they did, as you can see on the right, they compiled some earlier information, including what we call invention disclosure material and some early notes and correspondence about their patents into an NFT and auctioned it off on the Ethereum, something called Foundation app. Again, noting here that in addition to the remuneration from this sale, UC Berkeley has a continuing royalty on subsequent transactions, with the proceeds going to funding ongoing research. How fascinating. Let's shift from this background to patents. And first, acknowledge that patent NFTs are the first patent representing a business asset. We are able to take the characteristics of blockchain. Two notable characteristics are trust, immutability, and the creation of evidence, and apply them to the patent space. I noticed, Petko, your mention of, for example, some legal issues regarding smart contracts. We are going through personally at IPwe the regulatory review for our NFTs. And we also, as I'll get into in terms of our development of NFTs, have approached the market from an enterprise level to take the most conservative approach to building these NFTs in the historical licensing regime, which are not subject to securities, but also we're building them in a manner that is acceptable to enterprise. And these unique characteristics of blockchain are part of that regime. Why are we doing that? We have a great interest in assisting SMEs, but the top 1,000 enterprise companies own 50% of all patents. Creating a tipping point and acceptance of patent NFTs by enterprise companies will benefit not just the enterprise companies, of course, but will create a platform that is the location or global marketplace that all stakeholders will go to transact, discover, and understand patent rights, thereby building the patent innovation economy. So all this background's terrific. The question is, though, why patent NFTs? Why is IPwe doing this, and why should it be important for the people who are attending this webinar? Well, Petko noted that, again, we are the leading NFT use case. Let's take the opportunity of acknowledging that this use case has real-world applications. These statistics, I hope, will be inspirational to those both who already have patent assets. In the EU, there's a statistic that only 9% of SMEs have patents. So if there's two takeaways I could suggest from my portion of the presentation, one is understanding patent NFTs as value, and two, if you don't have patents or IP, to investigate how they can apply to your business and give you access to some of the statistics you're seeing here. And so why patent NFTs? Patents, in our view, and in the statistics shown, predict the success of companies. The standardization of patents represented simply by the attributes of existing NFTs, therefore helps SMEs to increase the valuation of their companies, to be recognized for their investment in patents, and ultimately to bring shareholder value, which is their function. There is a discussion about ownership and authenticity. One might say, for patents, aren't patents already in an existing register which demonstrates their ownership, and therefore why are patent NFTs going to add value? Of course, IPwe's goal in our NFT program and our offerings is not to add complexity to an already complex system, but to increase efficiencies and create simplicity to allow the ecosystem to better function. So again, the question, isn't it already done through patent offices? Unfortunately, it's not in several respects. Approximately 30% of all titles provided in patent offices are inaccurate, and that's at the origination. So the function of patent offices is basically to provide origination of patents. They're quite busy. If you can imagine, with patents being new, useful, and non-obvious technology, there's a density to the work that they do. As a result, once a patent is granted, patent offices generally do not continue to interact in a formal way. In other words, there's not a requirement once a patent is issued that the assignee report on subsequent assignments. There's a way to do it. For example, in the US Patent Office, you can fax in some information. Here we are discussing the world of digital opportunities, so you can understand how cumbersome that is. And as a result, the provenance and the accuracy of ownership in patent offices is a limitation. If we're thinking about assets generally, such as title to your house or a property right that you own, give some thought or pause for a moment and think about how easy it would be to transact that asset where the mere ownership of it was in question. And in fact, historically, that's what happens in licensing agreements. There is a term and condition that states a disclaimer of the ownership of patents. Obviously, a problem that needs to be corrected, and a problem that blockchain technologically now enables. How exciting. So what? What's the result of taking a ubiquitous problem for NFTs and applying it in this use case, where while everyone recognizes the value of patents and the prediction of success of businesses derived from them, what does it actually mean for the patent use case? Well, when we have inaccuracy and fractionalization of ownership, we have transactional risk. There's a number of ways to address that risk, and the way that that's been done in the patent space is by working with patent professionals, and who do excellent work, of course, but the transaction costs, the discovery, the transparency is limited. And that limitation is another reason why patent assets, in contrast to other standardized assets, are lagging. Patent NFTs, in our view, and in the view of the tremendous amount of interest we're seeing for them, we believe will overcome from a technological enablement this limitation in patents and truly create a global patent marketplace. What's the history of IPwe's development? We are fortunate to have been founded by Eric Spangenberg, who has over 25 years of experience in the IP space, monetizing patents. We'll end the presentation with a little bit of statistics about Eric, but the top level is that he's earned $2.5 billion for patent owners, and in large part based on his being a principal investor. What does that mean? Well, that means, first of all, he would have had to have done excellent data analysis to identify the opportunities to invest in. And starting in about 2003, he began working on data analytics before the word AI existed. Fast forward to 2018, and the result of building a identification of correct patent ownership, correcting a lot of the incorrect 30% of the records, again, are incorrect, and correcting those. Part of the early days of IPwe was creating a global patent registry. Patent ownership was implemented at that point on the blockchain. And again, to this notion of ownership and authenticity, the reliance on USPTO ownership was insufficient, and so IPwe went several layers further, first asking the actual owners to verify their ownership, and finally asking owners to represent that they have permission to transact. We'll get into another layer of that in a moment, but even the establishment of the correct ownership of patents through NFTs automatically creates additional value. Moving ahead to 2021, we see the term NFT come into existence. And now, as Margarita mentioned, it's a key term that's being searched. We have the crypto asset market maturing. We have the Oracle problem being addressed, on-chain, off-chain records, and smart contract integration is advanced. In between this period too, as you may know, IBM and IPwe have announced a partnership. That partnership started back in 2019 when IPwe was selected for the IBM Blockchain Accelerator Program. And over the past 2.5 years, what you'll see as the result of our patent NFT has been a collaboration with IBM for producing an enterprise-ready, enterprise-level patent NFT using IBM blockchain services and IBM support for selection of our public blockchain protocol. And we're working currently with Casper and Hyperledger in large part from an enterprise level to acknowledge the impact of green scores on companies with other public ledgers. What does a IPwe patent NFT look like? Well, hopefully you can see this. It's apologies for the small text. That's information that's patentees, which you don't need to read carefully. But at the very top line, this is a visual representation of data you would often see on the face of a patent. And the notion of the patent security based on the levels of verification I've mentioned so far, and also one additional one I'll leave you in suspense, is something that IPwe believes will be a market leader because the ownership and authenticity of patents is paramount to standardizing patents as an asset class. Some additional things you'll see here, again, the patent number, some traditional data associated with patents. Of course, we're highlighting inventors. Our perspective is inventors and creators, as I mentioned earlier, with art are just key, and we want to make sure that at every level we're honoring their contributions. You'll see a little bit more on the right. And if anyone has noticed on the left, underneath the token ID and hash, the suspense is ended. There's an insurance policy ID shown there. And so the final piece of ownership that sounds simple and elegant today took about 2 years to determine, but the IPwe patent NFT will include title insurance. It sounds like an obvious solution today, but title insurance for patents has never existed. Just to give you a glimpse into our pricing for our patents and our insurance, we'll be minting for about $300 per patent, and our title insurance will be about $1,500, creating now a record on the blockchain with all of the value and attributes of blockchain, which will allow, again, for transparency and discoverability of these assets. The interaction of our tokens, which at the top level you can think of as a title deed representing the ownership based on the verification levels I've mentioned of patent office verification, owner verification, owner authenticity and permission to transact, and then finally title insurance is the key top level portion of our tokens. Underneath the top level are sub-tokens or child tokens, where we also add the traditional licensing and use rights that are associated with patents. The information for transactions are located in smart contracts, and as you can see, the additional data on the right, including a simple license, which incorporates smart contract terms, and part of our offering is to combine smart contracts with recording contracts, which allow greater ease by attorneys of understanding the contents and the rights, terms and conditions of those contracts. Who will intellectual property NFT benefit? Most importantly, we believe that they're going to benefit patent owners because with transparency and discoverability and standardization, there'll be an ease of transaction. And with an ease of transaction, we'll see an increase in transaction. The current transaction market is valued at 180 billion, and that is based on approximately 5% of all patents in the world being monetized. Imagine if, as an asset class, the transaction and standardization resulted in an increase in those transactions, what the valuation would mean. For SMEs, the ability to identify financial and commercial opportunities through the discoverability and connection and ease of transactions for patents affords new paths to growth to SMEs. We're also seeing a market develop where, as finance understands these assets better, it produces additional paths to financing them. For example, as asset-backed loans, where patents and IP portfolios can be considered collateral. Another, I think, fascinating statistic, which I hope the audience is aware of, is that 84% of the value of companies today are in intangible assets, which include, of course, IP. And so with that attribution of these assets to corporate value being so high and the historic lack of transparency and efficiency and standardization about them being so low, thinking about that gap and the opportunity that it provides for all stakeholders is truly exciting. Let me be aware of the time and leave this with a note about the major topics that we've covered. IPwe's NFTs support standardization. The main reasons why are title, transparency, attributes, trust, and smart contracts. And these create the foundation of an asset class in order to support standardization and eventually the realization of patents as financial assets, which are able to be used in a more efficient manner. Thank you so much, Margarita, and I just want to make sure I'm leaving time for questions.
Thank you, Cheryl, for the very interesting presentation and really practical description on how companies and SMEs may move forward in their patent management, especially when they don't have one yet or they're working on a new one yet. The statistics you showed on Europe percentage and numbers of patents is something we should reflect upon. And I'd like to ask the audience if there's any questions. So far, I've not seen one, but I'll give you a couple of more minutes if you want to add something. And Cheryl, I will start by asking you one question, and that's if I'm a company, I'm not a technological company, I'm in a manufacturing or I'm in any business that is not related with technology, and I believe it's time for me to move forward with my patent. Which are the steps you suggest to take, practical steps to move forward in implementing this technology in this space?
Well, it's a great question. Interesting, in my beginning to work with IPwe, I'm located in the US, and I began to work on a project that we're very proud of called Paradigm, where we are interested in working and have been in discussions with the EC to support SMEs and their development of patents and understanding of them. And what I came to realize is the EU has fantastic resources for SMEs, probably better than the US. And so the first step that I would recommend is for an SME to seek out the numerous publicly available resources that the EU provides and match those resources with the SME's funding. It's critical. Patents can be an exercise that very quickly amount to cost rather than value. And so understanding the resources and the funding is the first step. The next is to gather a technology description of what they believe is their innovation. There's a concept in the United States of a provisional patent application, and the minimum that an SME can do to put their foot in the door of patents is to gather their technology materials and to, under the correct regime, for example, in the US, a provisional patent can be filed in a relatively informal way. When there's funding, I recommend working with a patent professional as quickly as possible, but depending upon funding, there is this preliminary option. If we think of patents as a story of technology, as a point in time, it makes them more accessible and gets the door open for an SME. And then when there is funding available, working with a patent professional who's focused on the alignment between the patents and the business objectives is the next step. And then I leave it to the wonderful patent professionals who are out there.
Connected to funding, there's a question from Dimitar Kiosev, who is asking approximately what would be the cost to file a patent through NFTs?
So
I think it's a broad question, and but if you can give us an idea on the, let's say, the steps and approximately, especially because the market in the US and the market in the EU is very different, but if you have any idea on that space.
Sure. And so I see that question as two parts. One is, what is the cost to procure a patent? I can give you an example in the US that there has been a congressional testimony stating that the cost to procure a patent is $20,000 on average. I would think about that in a different way. The procurement of a patent takes at minimum 2.5 to 3 years. And so the initial investment can be as little as $70 for a provisional patent application. Often there are practitioners who will have fees such as $5,000 to get a patent started, and then there's prosecution costs. So I would think about that figure over several years to understand from a bottom-up budget what the cost is, and those are US figures. The second part of that question seems to ask what the cost is for patent NFTs. Our opening cost is approximately $300 to mint per patent. We will recommend that title insurance be added, which will be approximately $1,500, and then there'll be menu of add-ons where IPwe can support the valuation based on our analytics. But our goal is, for example, at the $300 level, to make minting as accessible to patent owners as possible, particularly SMEs, so that they can participate in the benefit of the platform.
Thank you. I have another question from Vlad Trifa. That's this question, Petko and Shida, I think you both can give some insights on that. The question reads as following. Have you explored the option to sell a patent by selling the NFT? For example, I'm the owner or inventor and transfer my full IP right to whoever owns the NFT. So I can not only sell license rights, but the full patent to whoever buys my NFT. What's needed to enable this scenario, regulation or other elements?
Petko, would you like to weigh in? I'm happy to answer as well.
I'll be very brief. I have not yet tried. I think it's going to be a challenging kind of an endeavor. And why don't we kind of set up an experiment later on and see how it would go? Yeah, Cheryl, back to you.
Sure. So an assignment is one of the classic use cases for patents. And so it would just be a child token to represent that the top line NFT title or deed is now under the ownership of the assignee as being purchased. So it is among traditional rights that can be represented by patent NFTs. I'll add something that's really interesting. You know, we don't have time in this length to really go into another level of sophistication here, but the notion of assignments, the notion of license, these also can be fractionalized using NFTs in a way that was very cumbersome if we think about the difficulty in transferring ownership and documenting it in patent offices, and now we add multiple owners. NFT allows that to happen in a technologically enabled way, again, for efficiency. Another more sophisticated use case that we're talking particularly to universities about, and you saw it in the UC Berkeley digital art, all of the know-how, trade secrets and other rights that are related to patents but that are not formally acknowledged because they're difficult to authenticate can now themselves be minted as NFTs, and either there's additional value added for the patent NFT when it's transacted, or these can be sold separately. So for example, for early stage technology, which may not be ready for patenting, there was no way to transact this information. For example, it could be trade secret, and by transacting it, you would publicly disclose, thereby extinguishing the trade secret right. Presenting it with ownership and authenticity in an NFT, and determining what pieces to make private and what pieces to make public. We have that ability with a layered structure to our NFTs. There are public and private levels, allows a potential asset that historically has not been transactable to now be transactable using patents and NFTs.
Thank you, Cheryl. I have another question, last one for Petco, actually. I think you can give us some ideas on that. Is it possible to, from Konstantinos, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the full last name, but thank you, Konstantinos, for your question. Is it possible to point the main cost factors for an SME to create an NFT, for example, software application or others? Which are the key elements taken into consideration?
Taken in consideration when creating an NFT, I think they're pretty well established kind of blockchain companies that would help you and consult you on the way. Mainly, it's going to be a kind of a legal. Obviously, you need to consult a kind of either a copyright or a patent kind of a lawyer in case you would like to extend an NFT towards patent. So it's going to be primarily legal. And otherwise, the technical costs, yes, probably you need to consult some of the marketplaces. And yeah, probably some implementation costs, but they're like already straightforward, ready solutions, so kind of out of the box rather than you reinventing the wheel. So I wouldn't imagine it's going to be very, very expensive.
Thank you. And Cheryl, we have one yes or no question, more or less. Do you think the IPwe can be a solution for patent trolls?
Interesting. So patent trolls, or non-practicing entities, are owners of patents who do not commercialize them. Trolls is a bit pejorative. The historic rights for patents were, and going back to the most classic inventors in the US, Thomas Edison, was that you did not have to commercialize in order to benefit from patents. They are patent owners, and therefore patent NFTs will benefit them as they benefit any patent owner.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I know we are right on time, but there's an interesting element I'd like to comment from Giancarlo Caratti, head of IP and tech transfer at the European Commission, Joint Research Center, and he says, since several years, we tried the European Commission to develop a secondary market for the IP to support creative SMEs. However, when there is not a predictable revenue stream, it's very difficult to convince banks and financial organizations. Do you have other experience in the US connected to this?
Yes. So again, some of the statistics. Thank you for the question, and thank you for all these fabulous questions. I appreciate it. So our experience, I think, is reflected in the statistics out of the US and also out of the EU that demonstrate an economic relationship between patents and the revenue generation growth of companies. There are a number of partners that we are working with, and you'll see these developments happen during this year, where the focus is on the value of patents and their use in identifying new financing opportunities. And we're really excited to be a part of that. And we're seeing an increasing awareness. And the more that we can standardize and create patents as an asset class that's easy to discover and transact and understand by finance, the greater the acceleration of financial support for SMEs who invest in patents.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you all for your questions. It's really interesting to see that this topic is sparkling a debate and possibly new ideas and to develop a broader market. in the EU, in the US, or wherever you're based. And with that said, I think we may close today's meeting. I'd like to thank our speakers for being with us, and of course our audience for joining, Digital SME staff for the organization. And feel free to watch the event, the streaming of the event that will be published on the website and on the YouTube channel Digital SME. So if you want to go back to some concepts that have been shared, and to reach out for any additional questions you may have about the topic that has been discussed. I'm sure our speakers will be happy to get back to you with additional questions. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Stay safe, take care. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.